10,000 years ago, humans stopped chasing their dinner and started growing it. But the most important invention in human history wasn't a wheel or a spear, it was a mistake made in the dirt. Imagine you are a hunter-gatherer in the Fertile Crescent. You spend your days scouring the plains for wild berries and grubs. One afternoon, you stumble upon wild emmer wheat. You pick it, you crush it, and you mix it with water to make a simple porridge. It's bland. It's boring. But then, it sits out. Maybe you leave it by the fire. Maybe a stray spore of wild yeast floats down from the air and lands in your bowl. You come back, and the porridge has bubbled. It has changed. You toss it onto a hot flat stone, and suddenly, the smell hits you. That nutty, toasted, warm aroma that defines civilization. You've just made the world's first flatbread. This wasn't a sudden epiphany. It was a slow, delicious evolution. Archaeological evidence suggests this transition happened roughly 14,400 years ago in northeastern Jordan. We found charred crumbs at a site called Shabaka 1. These crumbs weren't from a farm. They were from wild plants. People were baking bread long before they were full-time farmers. Bread was the original fast food. It was portable, it was calorie-dense, and it was a masterpiece of chemistry. But it was missing one thing, the fluff. For thousands of years, bread was flat. Think of modern pita, tortillas, or chapati. It was functional, but dense. Then, around 3,700 years ago, the ancient Egyptians changed everything. They didn't just bake, they engineered. The Egyptians noticed that if they left their dough out, it would rise. They didn't know about single-celled fungi or metabolic respiration. They just knew that old dough made bread that was airy, light, and easier to chew. They were the first to master sourdough. They kept a piece of the fermented dough from one day to use as a starter for the next. This was the birth of the leavened loaf. By the time the Roman Empire hit its stride, bread was the backbone of the state. Rome didn't run on gold, it ran on grain. The government provided a grain dole to over 200,000 citizens. If you didn't have bread, you had a riot. They built massive commercial bakeries and even invented the first mechanical dough mixers, powered by donkeys. They could produce massive quantities of standardized loaves, ensuring the empire stayed fed and, more importantly, quiet. Bread also functioned as the world's first plate. In medieval Europe, the wealthy ate off fine wood or metal, but the common people used trenchers. These were thick, stale slabs of coarse bread. You put your stew on top, ate the meat, and then gave the gravy-soaked bread to your dog or the local beggar. It was the ultimate zero-waste kitchen hack. But let's talk about the dark side of the loaf. For most of history, white bread was a status symbol. Milling wheat to remove the bran and germ was labor-intensive. It required expensive equipment and hours of sifting. If you were eating pure white bread in the 1700s, you were wealthy. If you were eating dark, gritty, bran-filled bread, you were a peasant. That changed during the Industrial Revolution. In the 1870s, the invention of the steel roller mill made it possible to strip wheat down to its starchy center at a massive scale. Suddenly, white bread wasn't just for the rich. It was cheap, it was uniform, and it stayed soft for days. It became the default. But we sacrificed something in the process. We lost the fiber, the minerals, and the complexity of the grain. We turned a miracle of prehistoric engineering into a mass-produced commodity. We created a world where bread is so cheap we throw it away by the ton, yet we've forgotten how to actually make it. Think about that for a second. We went from scraping wild seeds off the ground to baking industrial loaves in massive factories. We spent 14,000 years perfecting a recipe that requires only 3 ingredients: flour, water, and salt. Yet, look at the back of a bag of modern supermarket bread. You'll find preservatives, conditioners, emulsifiers, and enough sugar to make a dessert. We have optimized the process so much that we have engineered the life out of the food. Bread built our cities. It defined our social structures. It even gave us the word Lord, which literally translates from Old English as loafward, or the person who guards the bread. The history of bread is the history of human survival. Every time you break a piece of bread, you are participating in a ritual that spans 500 generations. You are connected to the woman in Jordan who first toasted a grain mash over a fire. You are connected to the Egyptian baker who learned how to harness invisible bubbles of gas. You are connected to the Roman soldier who marched on the strength of a weak ration. We often look at the future and think about technology. We think about AI and space travel and microchips. But sometimes, the most sophisticated technology isn't something that plugs into a wall. It's the simple, ancient science of taking grass seeds and turning them into life. So, the next time you hold a loaf, look at it. It's not just fuel. It's an artifact. It is the single longest running experiment in the history of our species. And the most interesting part? We are still adding to the recipe. What will bread look like in another 1,000 years? Will we still be using yeast? Or will we have moved on to something else entirely? The only thing we know for sure is that as long as there are humans, there will be a hunger for the loaf. And as long as we have the ingredients, we will find a way to make it rise.